My name is Simon Pickup. I've been asked to talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial journey, and while I've seen and been a part of a few of those, I've only lived one, at least so far. So today I'm going to share a little bit about my journey and what has helped me along the way. I'd like to start by asking a question. What is my job on the planet? What is it that needs doing that I know something about that probably won't happen unless I take responsibility for it? The famous futurist and designer Buckminster Fuller was once asked how he found his way, and his answer was that he continuously asked himself these questions and he followed his nose. Something clicked for me the first time I read that. He wasn't just asking what you should do for work or how you can contribute in general. He was forcing you to think about what specifically you could do to contribute, perhaps uniquely. These questions are powerful in helping me focus on what really matters when I need to think about what to do next. And they're a part of what has led me here today. So what needs doing? To answer that, I've got to take you back. So this is me as a kid learning how to use a drill press and a lathe. I'm not sure why I'm wearing camouflage, but needless to say, I had an unusual childhood. My parents fled the Philippines and came to Canada in the 1980s when the Marcos regime fell. Back in the Philippines, they ran a machine shop. And when they came here, they didn't just bring their tools and their machines, they also brought their antique instruments, and it was a lot. I mean, I'm talking about like entire shipping containers full of what my parents would call their artifacts. And because my parents were collectors of objects that they felt were the most important parts of the most important thing that had ever happened, the Industrial Revolution. And trust me, there are a lot more stories where that came from. But suffice to say that I grew up surrounded by a lot of hardware and I learned how to use tools early. And at a certain point, I began to think about what I wanted to build. What I decided to build for a science fair was a hydrogen electrolyzer. Because like many boys my age, I wanted to blow something up. An electrolyzer is a simple device that uses an electrical current to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. What I did is I ran a hose from where the hydrogen came out to a bucket of water filled with soap. The hydrogen-filled soap bubbles would get bigger and bigger until I used a candle to light them and they would go boom. What I didn't realize was that this was the beginning of finding my own answer to the question, what needs doing? By the time I was in high school, I had spent years reading and learning everything I could about hydrogen. I became obsessed with the idea that it could be the key to building a new and sustainable energy system, and I wasn't alone. By the early 2000s, interest in hydrogen was growing. Investment in renewable energy, which is critical for producing clean hydrogen, was also growing rapidly. I felt like I was going to miss the wave. So in grade 10, I dropped out of high school to start a not-for-profit called Youth Hydrogen, working with local governments. What I learned was if we were going to build a future powered by hydrogen, I needed to start a real company. But that was a terrifying thought. I was a high school dropout with no real credentials, and starting a company seemed impossible. This is when I came up against the second part of the question. What is something that I know about that probably won't happen unless I take responsibility for it? I had to try. The way I saw it, I had to raise money, and if I couldn't, then I would go back to school. Over time, and with a lot of help, I was able to refine the idea of starting a hydrogen venture into a model for providing hydrogen as a service for commercial vehicle fleets. This got me a meeting with an investor interested in building a car company, which turned into discussions about converting vehicles to run on hydrogen, which led to some R&D money to build a prototype. Specifically this prototype, hydrogen conversion, which we brought down to San Francisco. And this is us demoing it to Tim Draper, who's an early investor in Tesla. And this was the critical milestone that we needed to convince another large investor that we were onto something big, which at last enabled me to close a major round of funding and launch the company. It took 7 years all in between dropping out and that car conversion. And by the time we closed that round, I was 23. And all I could think about was that I could finally work full-time on hydrogen. Together with my team, we spent the next few years working on light-duty hydrogen vehicles. And in 2022, I became the CEO of Teralta, where today we build utility-scale clean hydrogen projects across North America, supplying clean hydrogen that is cost-competitive with fossil fuels. And through our partnership with Advantech Global, we offer end-to-end capabilities from project development through to financing, equipment manufacturing, project delivery, and execution. And this image brings us full circle. This is a bay of electrolyzers from one of our projects, roughly 10,000 times more output per day than the first one I built. And I continue to work on my answers to those questions. If you ever find yourself uncertain about what to do next, I encourage you to ask, what is your job on the planet?